Welcome to the CoSuccess and Conversation series. Welcome to the next episode of CoSuccess and Conversation. I'm delighted to be welcoming Daniel Okon, who is the CEO of ACTIV, which is an e-commerce growth agency. And we decided a really interesting conversation we wished to have was really around the looking at the Millennials and the Gen Zs and thinking a little bit around how have they been going through the last year and a half, the pandemic, the working from home, all of the ups and downs, the social isolation. And welcome, Daniel, to CoSuccess and Conversation.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited to dive in and talk about this. This has definitely been something that I think most companies and really all companies have been trying to deal with. And I think it's taken a lot of testing and reiterating. For us, we had been doing remote work even before COVID. So I think that's an interesting thing of like how we adjusted and changed with everything happening, but also some of the lessons we've learned in really testing out a lot of different ways, because there's not one way that's good. There's not like really one solid way to do things. So I think that's some of the things that we've really learned about over the last year of like what's working, what's not working, letting go of things, and then also taking on other things that actually are being effective.
What do you think has been working that you kind of learned about, or you said, actually, we tried this and it seems to help or work well?
Yeah, so one of the issues that I think you have when you're doing remote work is figuring out a schedule for the team. So when are you focusing on actual work, focused work or deep work? And when are you messaging back and forth? When are you communicating or asking questions? And so we have a pretty good cadence now. So we follow Kanban, which is a method of getting work done. And so we also have a team calendar. So what that looks like is usually Monday through Friday, there's a few hours, 2 to 3 hours of focused work that the team focuses on. The first start of the day, people share what they're working on, what they completed the day before, and then they dive into the actual work. And then we don't usually have meetings until later in the day, so afternoon or later, because we really want to make sure that first part of the day is focused on actually getting focused work done and really giving people the chance to really catch up or focus on whatever they need to get done. And that's really helped. And I think also having a team schedule, everyone has an understanding of that. We also share our calendars with each other. So everyone has transparency on Daniel has 7 meetings today. This is what's going on. And so it's very, very transparent across the board. And everyone knows to update their calendars. So I think that's a really helpful way to just have team transparency, especially in a remote setting. You don't know if Jeff is going to lunch or whatever he's doing. So giving some insights, even doctor's appointments, things like that, I think has really helped us as a team be transparent.
And it seems to build, listening to what you're saying, it seems to build a lot of the connectedness between the team. It's like, well, at least I know where you are and when you're there and when I might be able to reach out to you or connect with you. There was a team I heard, and I've heard this actually a few times now, where they had moved from working together, physically together, in cubicles together, to remote. And they found they actually very productive, they got their work done, they were doing stuff, but they were missing this sort of to and froing that they were having. And they actually tested it and then decided they liked it, is that each morning they would log on to, I think the platform they were using was MS Teams. And so you'd log on to Teams and we'd open up a meeting like this, and then we'd just carry on with our work. But it would be, hey, are you seeing X or did you do? And they could have that sort of casual cubicle chat that they were missing. And I said, and they were describing it to me, and there were two, basically very much Gen Zs. And I said, how'd it work? He said, it just added that bit. And once it became a bit of a habit, we didn't really think about it. It was just like, well, the guy sitting at the next to me doesn't mean I have to talk to him. But they had done it virtually. And I thought that was an interesting build on that as well as a way to cope with some of the lack of connectivity as it goes through.
That's interesting. Maybe we could test that out. I'd be interested. I've done working sessions with team members, 2-3 hours of sessions before, but I've never done that on a consistent basis. Do they do that every single
They
day?
do it, but it's not like they're working together. They're just sort of on together.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at like my screen, you're looking at your screen, but I can sort of, because I know you're there, hey, did that email come in from Joe? And I can have that just totally informal. It's not a meeting. We're not working together. And if I was kind of, dude, I'm really struggling with this, and we can have a little chat about it kind of idea. So it was just an interesting something to experiment with. And I've had others. They said, yeah, we tried it for a week and then it just died. It was just too much difficulty. So as you say, there's no right or wrong as you get that. Building on that, there's another thing that I'm hearing a lot about, which really falls into that category of a lot of people overworking, feeling overwhelmed, feeling burnt out. It's almost every time we're talking and listening to teams or groups, it just doesn't seem to be stopping. What's the experience you've had with both your team at ACTIV or the people that you're working with, the founders you work with?
Yeah, this is definitely something that I think, especially with everything that's went on this last year, I mean, so many things have happened with, we're in Minneapolis, so George Floyd was a massive throughout the U.S., but also very deeply within, our city, and also COVID happening. So many things were happening to affect people's mental health. So one of the things that we implemented was, which I learned from another founder who's got a really successful company. They do a quarterly mental health day. So people take that day off and they just take that mental health day. But we also we were talking about the schedule, we try to leave some buffer and margin so that there's actually some space for people to detach from being working. Because when you're working, especially from home, you're technically it's hard, especially if you don't have an office. You're literally just in the weeds all the time, it feels like. I think a lot of times people struggle with that. So having that team schedule and knowing when people normally are going to finish their day so that they can move on and enjoy time with their family, their loved ones, whatever that looks like. I think that's really helpful so that there's some separation there. But we also have to have check-ins. So we've implemented a weekly check-in with the team. So at the end of the week, we connect and we don't talk work. We don't talk accounts or business or we love the success we have with clients, but really we focus on how's the team doing, connecting. And I think that's also helpful because it just gives people a break from thinking about what they need to accomplish and what they need to finish. So I think those are some of the things that I think can be helpful. We're a small team. We don't have a lot of people. There's 10 people on our team. So we focus on that connection. I think that goes really a long way when we're focusing on mental health.
I was talking to somebody else around the kind of the burnout idea, and one of the things they said was quite interesting. They said, when we were basically told to go back and work from home, basically the office invaded my home. I didn't ask for it, it did. And it caused a lot of disruption, a lot of, actually, he said, frustration, not really the company. It wasn't their fault, but I felt invaded. And then little by little, he said he and his team, they were finding their sort of their groove. But he said, as they talked about it as a team, some were younger parents, and the husband and wife were both working out how, well, if you can manage this time, I'll do that time. I've got a young, it's a couple to work with, and she tends to work a lot with Europe and he works a lot in North America. And so they literally had sort of the early shift and the late shift, and they were working through that. And the point he was making was, if you looked at it through the lens of the old, you come in at 9, you go at 5 or 8 and 6, whatever your working day is at the office, that kind of went out the window. And I think one of the challenges that is happening at the moment as people are trying to come back to work is they had, to your point, they reestablished a different calendar that fit in with kids to school, getting the dog to the vet, feeding everybody, doing it in a different way. And you can certainly feel some degree of, oh, for goodness, now we've got to go back to this, and now I've got my commute, and I've got to do this, and it's creating a lot of turmoil and turbulence, which is upsetting for people, I think. And it's having a little bit of empathy through, frankly, this next 3 months. Let's be optimistic and hope we are coming back out of this. But there's a bit of some, I'm seeing in some companies a bit of enough already. Just get back in and get back to work. And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure that's quite the right way. I think you're talking about much more of an empathetic kind of approach to this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point where I think I've seen some companies do a hybrid approach. So 2 days a week, they're in the office, 3 days a week, at home. I think there's other companies that are doing, we've decided to go all in remote. That works for some companies. For us, we were already doing remote before. So we do have an office that some people go into in Minneapolis, but we don't require anybody to do anything. So as long as people are joining the meetings, we're connecting with our team, and we're getting work done, I think that's the most important. And it does give a little bit of flexibility in terms of hiring and growth as we expand. So I do think that remote work is here to stay, and whether it be people do hybrid or they have office space, and sure, many companies have pretty expensive leases, so they want to use their offices. Oh, yeah. But for us, we really focus. A lot of our stuff is focusing on I'd rather pour in money into team members or resources for them than having expensive offices. So I'd rather do that than do the other route. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I was talking to a COO the other day, and they had just literally, I think last year, moved into a whole new building, and I said, how are you feeling about it? And he said, well, initially I was really mad, and then he said, I'm never going to have another building for basically the next 20, 30 years, because we can just basically flex by allowing more people out. We use the space, whereas before you'd barely got a building going, and it was already a capacity, and you have to think about the next one and the next one and the next one. So I think that plays out. And building on that, how do you, when we think a bit more to these, let's say the younger millennials, the Gen Zs that are now really a very significant part of the workforce, and any thoughts around their mentality or the benefits of the startup versus those that are working in the larger organizations that are maybe more structured, more, the way they're done?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've found is the younger generation definitely wants to be a part of a team and feel like they belong, and they also have purpose. They don't in times past, it maybe has worked that people want to go up a ladder, right? In a corporate ladder. But I think now people really want to, and this has been known for a bit, but people want to have purpose. And I think when you join a team, whether it's small or medium sized or bigger, you want to be able to say, okay, what I'm doing is contributing to something that matters. And I think that to me is one of the most important things for us as Active. We focus on, we work with purpose-driven brands. We want to be a purpose-driven brand, and we want to make sure that we're actually pushing towards our vision, but also pushing towards the purpose that we have. And I think when you have that and you continue to call people out to be like, hey, remember our purpose, remember what we're going towards, I think people actually have an innate desire to not only be a part of that team, but also contribute to that type of company and help it grow and want to talk to other people instead of the language of, we always talk about this. It's not, it's not Active as a company that's there. It's us. It's what our company and it helps people have a clear understanding of, hey, this is us. And then I think that really helps with our generation, or I guess my generation and the younger generation and the Gen Z generation of this is our thing and this is my thing and I can help it grow.
It's interesting because, as long as we've talked, I know that is for you. It's very front and center. It has been over time. And I'm wondering, the fact that you were sort of designed and you think as a distributed remote company, it's very much built into your DNA. One of the things that I noticed, and that in fact we were getting very involved in, was as teams that had worked together physically all worked from home, the piece that suffered wasn't the day-to-day work, the day-to-day meetings. It was the connectedness. It was the team feeling. It was the team connection. And with a lot of teams that, the way we typically work with teams is we have these sort of cadence pulse checks every quarter, and we just bring them together. How are you doing? Like, let's go back and look at the team's purpose. And literally at one of these, about halfway through, there was one of the participants who always insisted, I feel like I got my team back again. It was like that, just that chance to spend 2 hours, 3 hours with the team, not going through the status list of every project going through, but just connecting and talking about how are we doing as a team and building that. And I think that is, in many ways, your old experienced folks at living distributed, and you've adapted the way of working to that. I think a lot of companies are now facing things that you've been doing for several years, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. I think that the mix of being able to get together physically, that's intentional, getting together and making sure that, like you're saying, the quarterly, we've been doing biannual retreats or connects. And so that really helps us learn how are people and actually make really true connections, memories. And I think those memories are something that builds bonds, especially when people are younger. They think they remember these really experiences so much more, and it ties them to feel loyal, feel connection, feel belonging. And I think that's so important. That's so essential. I know there's a book called Culture Code, and talks a lot about that, like sense of belonging that people want to have. And when you have that, I think that can really open up a lot of opportunity, but also the ability for your team members genuinely to enjoy being a part of the company that you have, or the team that they're a part of.
Yes, I think I really resonate with that. I've always been not only at an organizational purpose, but as a team's purpose. We actually do a full exercise around it. And it's very interesting how most teams have a purpose, but it's very ambiguous, or it's very implicit, it's not explicit. And when you actually enable them or help them actually lay it out with the words, you can almost see people go, yeah, that's us, that's what we do. And it's a very powerful, and I think it plays to this. And I've noticed this in the teams, the loyalty is sort of more to the purpose. The loyalty is to the team. The loyalty is to my teammates. And that's a little different from what was let's call it the more traditional, when I was going, in the early days, where the loyalty was to the company. And it's a significant shift that I think some companies are still struggling with and working their way around as they go through that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things where it's like, what if somebody leaves and they pull other people? Like, what does that look like? And I think to circumvent that a little bit is like, when you've got a team that has the same vision and purpose, it keeps people together even more, because you're not thinking about, okay, I could do this myself. Maybe some people could, and that happens at times. But when people are like, okay, we have a shared purpose, it helps so much. I completely agree.
Last question before we wrap things up. You had mentioned something to me that stuck with me, but it was the way that, particularly, the younger generation, the Gen Z, is absorbing information or learning. And you talked around that, and it was interesting because you're right, it's shifted a lot. And even being back at home, everything's gone online, whether you liked it or not. Well, they always were online, but talk a bit about that before we close out.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've found is Gen Z loves YouTube University. And that's one of the things that you have to lean into. So figuring out ways that you can foster that and really provide the ability for team members to learn and grow. So whether that's YouTube University or courses or online conferences that people have access to, that they can continue to grow in their craft and their skill sets, because that to me is really going to help them expand and grow as a team member. And you got to figure out what's best for them. Gone are the days, I think, in my opinion, that people are going to just go through this boring onboarding process, right? 3 or 4 weeks of training that's super dry. They want to be engaged. They want to anything that we're entertained all the time. Our phones, our computers, everything like Netflix, like everything is entertaining. So how do we make sure we like meld that together? And to me, that's really kind of a mix of that. And we also build curriculum. So we build curriculum that's always changing and ever growing to make sure that team members are engaged and learning, because I think it's extremely important, especially for a company that's growing and in the stage we're at. So I think that's really powerful and really important.
I was just even if I think, because my kids are in that Gen Z generation, is the reality is when I was learning how to fix my car, when you used to have to go fix your car, you either had a friend or a dad or somebody's dad ran a garage or whatever it was, and they would help you. When my daughter does that, she just pulls out YouTube videos. She looks at them. She's literally got the phone on with the bonnet open, and she's fixing the engine as she's going. How do they learn to cook? YouTube videos. Somebody's done it. They've done a cool little video, and that's what they're doing. And it's become so normal. I think it's fascinating. Daniel, we could carry on for a long time chatting about this. This is really interesting. Thanks so much for your perspective. Really enjoyed having you on, and look forward to the next conversation soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks very much, Daniel. Bye.